A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 4. The Dream Master.
Hey guys, what's up? Welcome to my channel. My name is Kylie if you're new, and today I will be reviewing Nightmare on Elm Street 4, The Dream Master. This movie came out in 1988. It received a 53% on Rotten Tomatoes, and here's what happened. Child murderer Freddy Krueger returns to haunt and kill yet another group of teenagers in their dreams. Yep, pretty simple, pretty straightforward. So as always, I'll get into my fun facts about the movie, and then I'll get into my review. This is the first film in the franchise in which Robert Englund is the top billed at the credits, which is interesting to me because he deserves it, certainly. He's definitely the star of all these movies, obviously. It's just weird to me because he only ever has like 10 to 15 minutes of screen time in every single movie, so he's like hardly in it at all. But he is the one constant from every single movie, so it makes sense. He should be top billed. Speaking of him, this is Robert Englund's favorite movie of the entire series, which I never would have guessed. In a classroom scene when the students are all being lectured on the philosophy of dreams, the teacher is actually played by New Line Cinema CEO and the director of this movie, Robert Shea. Or, excuse me, he's not the director, he is the producer of these movies. The success of this film again convinced the producers to continue the series and make the next Nightmare movie after this one. And this was the highest grossing Nightmare movie in the series aside from Freddy vs. Jason, which grossed a little bit more. According to Annette Benson, the casting director, over 600 actresses auditioned for the role of Alice. But Lisa Wilcox was obviously cast as Alice, and she said that the role was perfect for her because in real life she said that she is also a shy girl who didn't think that she would ever get a boyfriend. And finally, in this movie, Kincaid's dog is named Jason, which might be a nod to the Friday the 13th franchise. What's interesting is that the dog Jason in this movie brings Freddy back to life, and then in Freddy vs. Jason, Freddy brings Jason back to life. But that does it for my fun facts, and now I'm gonna get into my review. I know this video is probably gonna be shorter. I don't have a ton to talk about with this one, mainly because it was mostly enjoyable, so I'm just gonna get into all the stuff that I liked. So first of all, this movie is just a goof fest. It's just goofy, and I love that they leaned into it for this one. Robert Englund is hilarious. Like, that man is a comedian. The talent that it takes to drop those kinds of one-liners without having any other surrounding dialogue, like, you really need to have a commanding presence and the confidence to just drop a line like that. And he has so many in these movies. So for that, and for the kind of outlandish 80s culture that they threw into this movie, the fact that it's self-aware, I didn't mind all that stuff. I was like, yeah, okay, let's just have fun. I think there's a stark contrast between movies like this and movies like Halloween Resurrection, where it was just a whole like cultural barf storm. Because I don't feel like in Halloween Resurrection they were self-aware. It just ended up being cheesy in a way that didn't work because I don't think that was the initial intention. Whereas in this movie, they were like, let's just lean into it. Like, let's make it goofy. Let's just make it in your face 80s. It'll be funny that way. The only downside to that is that they don't age super well, but I'll get into that. So for the stuff that I liked, I'm gonna get into some of my favorite scenes first, and one of the ones that I must talk about, is the way that Freddy comes back to life. So the dog pees where Freddy is resting where he was killed before, and then this brings him back to life. Let's just watch a little bit of that together, huh? I'm gonna skip ahead because I love these practical effects. So Englund has mentioned that that dog is supposed to represent a hellhound, which kind of just goes in line with how evil Freddy is and stuff like that. So I know that's absurd. I'm sure there's a lot of people that are not a fan of that. I liked it. I'm gonna give it 10 points for the creativity. Jeez. I'm gonna give it 10 points for the creativity. I'm gonna give it 5 points for making me laugh, and another 10 points for how good the practical effects were in that scene. So add that all together and it's a perfect score of 25, and no, I will not elaborate on that. But some other scenes that I really liked, oh my god, the next one that comes to mind is the girl in the waterbed. I can't show it because her boobies are out, but her boobies are not out in a gratuitous way. It's actually very tasteful, which is surprising for how goofy the movie is, but this girl looked gorgeous in this waterbed. I don't know how they did it. It must have been really hard to do that because it was obviously a practical effect. They like actually had a girl in the water under, I don't know how. That scene also had my favorite Freddy one-liner from this movie. How is this for a wet dream? I mean, come on. But I love that scene, so that's probably like my second or that actually, I don't know, that might be my favorite scene. No, there's another one. They're all my favorite. I don't know. Okay, moving on. Another one that I liked but also might have been a little bit questionable was the whole like Karate Kid homage scene. I'm gonna go back to what I was talking about earlier about how sometimes leaning into the goofiness and like leaning into just all of the pop culture of your era and like shoving that in your movie can maybe make it not age super well, because when I was young my dad showed me the Karate Kid, so I'm aware of that. I always have been aware of that culturally. I don't feel like a lot of people in my generation are. There was that remake with Jaden Smith that just wasn't good. That didn't really gain any traction, so I don't know. I just feel like that's not gonna age super well. I feel like when people watch that movie, especially now or even just like another 20 years from now, people are gonna be like, what the hell is this? It's because they probably won't know what it's in reference to. So anyways, I still like it because it's the movie leaning into its more absurd nature, and the same thing can be said for the scene of Freddy sucking the life out of Sheila? Was that her name? Sheila? It was really gross with the kissing and with the sucking, but it was a great concept nonetheless, and I think it ended up looking really cool.
Water sucked face.
No.
And then the last scene that's like totally ridiculous that I liked was the one where Alice was like using the nunchucks and stuff. Okay. I mean, they couldn't have gotten someone with the same hair or even a wig that was the same hair as Alice's. Like the contrast of her in the front with her hair and then the hair in the back, it's so obviously different, but like it's just hilarious, and I don't think that they cared that you would notice. I think it might have even been intentional. And then I have two more scenes that I think actually mix the absurdity with total awesomeness. The first one being the kids in the pizza, their faces being on the meatballs in the pizza that Freddy eats. That was kind of genuinely disgusting, but it was also obviously absurd. And then this last one I think is my favorite scene of the whole movie, when the girl turns into a bug. That was crazy. The special effects were super good in that scene. I mean, it didn't make any sense, but did it need to? No, absolutely not. It was just a good time. That's one thing that I really like about the Nightmare movies, is that despite in concept something being so disturbing and like horrifying to look at, the comedy elements involved in it make it easier to consume and therefore make it really enjoyable. Because if there weren't any comedic factors involved, I would have to look away, you know, I wouldn't be able to look at it. So I think that's definitely my favorite scene in the movie, is the girl turning into a bug. I don't think I've ever seen that before. Except for that episode of Rick and Morty where Rick totally Cronenbergs the world and those people like turn into bugs. Anyways, my next topic is the final girl, which is Alice. She was a decent final girl. She was like a little weak at times personality wise, but I mean, at least she actually had a personality. It was kind of the stereotypical like, I'm shy, I won't ever have a boyfriend. But I feel like that was more unique for the time period. It's definitely kind of played out now, but for the time period it was unique, and I did like her a lot more than most other final girls that I've seen, because she totally rose to the occasion. She like put on that whole outfit, she had this whole montage, and then she karate chopped Freddy's butt. Their whole showdown was ridiculous. It was ridiculous, but it was hilarious, and I really enjoyed it. Just very, very high entertainment value for me. For that reason alone, because I did like her personality and because she rose to the occasion like that and took Freddy on by herself more or less, I might even put her in like my top 10 final girls of all time. If I had that list, I don't. But if I did, I would consider putting Alice on that list. She was really memorable for me and I really liked her. And then I just have a few nitpicks about the movie, and then I'm gonna wrap it up. Kind of a short review, I'm sorry. Just two nitpicks this time. So one, I really don't enjoy the stereotype of nerds back then. So the stereotypical nerd vibe that was Sheila is just not for me. Since the 80s, we've definitely strayed pretty far away from that, and we've gotten away from that stereotype, but it still kind of lingers. It was really bad in the 80s because people thought that all nerds had to like wear giant glasses, and she, you know, wore her hair in a ponytail all the time. And she was quirky more in like a weird way rather than an endearing way, but she was still honestly one of my favorite characters. I found her to be really adorable, even though I didn't like the stereotypes that went into her character, but I liked her regardless. And then the second one is just really small and really brief. It's the fact that Alice's mom acts so cold and distant when Alice's friends have died. She's just so rude and so vacant about the whole thing for no reason. Like, for what? She shows concern for her daughter in that she gives her a sleeping pill, but there's no actual emotions. There's no care for her daughter. She was just like, bloop, go to sleep. So that was really weird to me. I guess sometimes in the nightmare movies, the parents are sort of like a secondary villain because they just don't believe their kids and they kind of get in the way of them staying awake and stuff like that. I just didn't find it necessary for her to be that cold, but that's just my little preference. Other than that, I'm very cool with this movie. I really liked this one. We had a unique final girl. They're leaning into the cheesiness and the fun of these movies. Robert Englund is hilarious, just dropping one-liners for us here and there. Oh, I didn't mention, but Danny Hassel in this movie, I mean, he kept me engaged, to say the least. So I know this one's not everyone's favorite, but I actually really liked it. I was pretty pleasantly surprised because I kind of thought that they might go downhill after part 3, but I personally don't think that they did. So I'm excited to watch part 5. Who knows what's coming? More cheesiness, more goofiness, more fun, entertaining times. I know this was a short video, but there just wasn't a whole lot to get into, like franchise-wise and grander story, grander picture-wise to get into with this movie. So I just didn't have as much commentary, but hopefully next week there'll be more to talk about with part 5. So I'm gonna wrap it up here, but as always, if you want to follow me on social media, my Letterboxd, Instagram, and Twitter are all at Kai Johns, and Letterboxd is where I talk about movies that I don't intend on reviewing on this channel. And then on Instagram, I always share with you guys when I go thrift shopping, whatever movies I'm watching, so you guys can watch them too in case I do a review of them, movie stacks, just other horror related news. And then on Twitter is where I share a lot of resources about like environmental stuff, BLM stuff, you know, the stuff that's happening in China. So that probably won't interest you, but like if you're interested in that other stuff, then follow me on Twitter as well. As always, please check out the sources, the petitions, the GoFundMes down below. I hope that you enjoyed this video and I hope I catch you in the next one. Bye!